A teenager is carrying something difficult and considers telling a parent. Before speaking, they can already hear the lecture, the panic, the punishment, or the story being repeated to another adult. Silence begins to feel safer than honesty. If you are among parents and teens caught in a cycle of secrecy and control, ask what this experience is responding to and what would make it more useful. That question opens a better conversation than another quick judgment about your personality. People sometimes reduce a teen's loss of trust in a parent to assuming secrecy proves bad character or that parental concern automatically creates emotional safety. That conclusion is too small to explain the experience. Trust grows when truth can enter the relationship without immediately costing dignity, privacy, or connection. Parents still need boundaries, but the way they respond teaches whether future honesty is possible. The behavior can make sense without being ideal, and understanding its purpose does not excuse every consequence. There is no single cause behind a teen's loss of trust. Development family history privacy rules, conflict temperament, and each person's behavior can interact. Use these ideas to improve the next conversation, not to diagnose the teenager or blame one parent for everything. Start with one possible mechanism. A first reaction becomes a forecast. Repeated anger teaches the teen to manage the parent's emotion before sharing facts. Hold this first explanation lightly and compare it with what your body choices and energy actually do. Compare this first clue across several situations before deciding what it means. Watch how that looks in a workday. A teen admits a mistake, and the conversation expands into every previous mistake they have made. In the first scene, the need beneath the behavior matters more than how the behavior looks from outside. Read the first scene through need, timing, and aftermath rather than appearance. A second layer is easy to miss. Lectures can replace curiosity, leaving the young person heard only as a problem to correct. The second explanation becomes useful only when the same conditions repeatedly produce a similar response. Use the second clue only if it predicts more than one response. The experience becomes clearer in private. A parent interrupts with solutions before understanding what happened or what the teen needs. The private scene reveals whether the response brings genuine recovery or merely delays discomfort. Use the private example to compare real recovery with delayed discomfort. The third piece concerns attention. Inconsistent consequences make honesty risky because the cost cannot be predicted. For the third explanation, distinguish what you observed from the meaning you assigned afterward. Keep observation and interpretation separate while testing the third clue. Social situations add another clue. One embarrassing detail becomes a family story, so the next important detail stays hidden. The social scene shows what happens when belonging, visibility, or another person's expectations enter the equation. Let the social example reveal the extra weight of belonging and visibility. Another part appears under pressure. Sharing private disclosures casually with relatives can turn help-seeking into public exposure. This fourth possibility matters most when pressure changes the intensity, timing, or cost of the response. Pressure is the comparison point for the fourth clue. Now place the same response inside a stressful week. A calm consequence follows a broken rule, but the relationship remains available and respectful. The stressful week example separates a stable preference from a temporary response to depleted capacity. Use the stressful example to check whether depleted capacity changes the response. A final mechanism helps explain repetition. Heavy surveillance may produce information while reducing the voluntary trust parents actually want. The fifth explanation should increase choice. Discard it if it only supplies a more sophisticated insult. A useful fifth clue creates options instead of another fixed identity. One final scene separates a trait from a trap. A parent returns after overreacting, apologizes clearly, and asks to hear the part they missed. The final scene asks whether the behavior remains flexible when circumstances, energy, or relationships change. Let the final example test whether choice remains available as circumstances change. To make the teen trust pattern more precise, compare 3 conditions: a rested day, a depleted day, and a day spent with people who feel safe. Notice whether the response changes in speed, intensity, or cost. If it shifts with context, the context belongs in the explanation. That comparison prevents one difficult moment from becoming a permanent identity. Look for a counterexample to teen trust as carefully as you look for confirmation. Remember a time when the usual response did not happen, happened less strongly, or ended sooner. Ask what was different about preparation, energy, environment, expectations, and support. A counterexample reveals the conditions that make greater choice possible. The hidden cost of teen trust deserves equal honesty. Privacy is part of growing up, yet secrecy becomes dangerous when a teen cannot bring serious risks: coercion, self-harm, abuse, or unsafe behavior to a trustworthy adult. Preserve whatever the response protects, connects, restores, or clarifies. Change the portion, reducing freedom, straining trust, or moving you farther from what you value. Start by observing the pattern. Regulate your first response before asking for the full story. Shock can be real without becoming the teen's burden. A second step is practical. Listen to understand the sequence before deciding on advice or consequences. Third, make the change specific. Explain privacy limits in advance, including situations where safety requires involving another adult. Fourth, make the new response repeatable. Keep consequences predictable, proportionate, and connected to behavior rather than the teen's identity. Fifth, use support carefully. Do not use a vulnerable disclosure as ammunition during a later argument. Sixth, review what actually happened. Repair openly after a poor response so the teen learns that relationships can recover from mistakes. Finally, know when more support is needed. Build ordinary connection outside crisis conversations because trust cannot survive on interrogation alone. Trust does not mean unlimited freedom secrecy from all adults or approval of every choice. It means boundaries are clear and truth is treated as a path toward safety rather than humiliation. Flexibility means choosing among several responses instead of being pushed into one move. An understandable response does not have to become the only move available. Try one 7-day experiment designed for teen trust, but do not repeat a generic ritual every day. Choose one relevant action, use it in a real situation, and record the outcome. Keep revise or discard the experiment according to evidence rather than guilt. The next disclosure may arrive badly timed and wrapped in defensiveness. Hear the risk underneath it. Your teen is testing whether honesty can survive contact with you. The first minute of your response may shape the next conversation months from now. The goal is not a new label. It is enough understanding and flexibility to make a more deliberate next choice.